Hello everyone and welcome to the podcast. My name is Nick Dove and this is the Afterlife Pod. If you want to reach me, my email is podafterlife@gmail.com and you can contact me about anything you'd like to. I keep meaning to get around to doing a bit more in regards to making a social media site or something like that to try and promote this message a little bit more, but I just never seem to get around to it. But it is on my to-do list. I've got a lot on my to-do list though, but yeah, eventually I'll get there. So yeah, if you want to reach me at the moment, all you can really do is send me an email, or you can probably find me on Facebook if you looked hard enough as well. Just send me a friend request and I will reply to you that way. So today I've got an experience from iands.org. For those of you who listen regularly, iands.org is one of the two websites I usually pick an experience from. The other one is endearth.org. Both really good, thorough websites on near-death experiences, and if you are interested in this topic and the afterlife and spirituality and that umbrella that encompasses all those things like God and the light, and it's a huge topic and well worth a look at these websites if you have got a few spare moments. So this one I'm reading today is called Wanting to Die, Man Leaves Body, Hugs Aunt and Returns Changed. The below event occurred around the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, during the most difficult period of my life, and at a time when I was close to suicide. To provide some background, prior to this event, I knew nothing about spirituality, nothing about NDEs or similar experiences, and I was unsure whether I believed in life after death. I'd been raised a Christian and had attended Sunday school when I was younger, and although I now occasionally attended church with my children, I wasn't a regular attendee. I am now, and was then, employed by a disciplined government service, a position I've held for nearly 30 years, and was not the type of person to believe in this kind of event. If you'd asked me at the time, I'd probably said that anyone claiming to have one of these experiences was either crazy, lying, or on drugs. Prior to this event, I was very caught up in my own life, always wanting more money and a larger house. But in the months leading up to this event, my life had changed completely. I'd recently discovered my wife had been involved in several affairs throughout our relationship, and we were now going through a bitter divorce. I was living in a friend's spare room and living away from my two young children for the first time in their lives. Financially, I'd lost everything and was facing bankruptcy. I was looking at a court case following an argument with my wife's lover, and as if things couldn't have gotten worse, I was in difficulties at work. There was nothing in my life which was the same as it had been 6 months earlier, and I'd gone from having everything to absolutely nothing. I felt like I was on a downward spiral with no hope of recovery, and so decided to take my own life. I made preparations, and then one night I made an attempt, but couldn't go through with it. A week later, I came closer to success, but again failed to see it through. It was after this second attempt that the following event took place. I went to bed and soon fell asleep. I had taken no medication or alcohol and had no known medical conditions. As far as I know, I was not close to death. but I suddenly came aware that I was out of my body. I don't recall seeing my body, but I could sense that I was close by, and it was behind me to my left. I was upright and slowly moving away from my body. I felt a little lost or disorientated, and then realized that there was a brick wall in front of me. Almost immediately, I started slowly walking through the wall and continued until I stopped in a void about 500 millimeters wide. The wall I'd just walked through was behind me, and another wall was in front of me. I stopped and looked at the bricks for a moment or so. I couldn't believe what I was doing, but something inside kept telling me to continue, and that's what I did. The feeling of passing through the walls was highly pleasurable. I could feel the brick passing through me as if it were like a sieve and the bricks were jelly. I then stretched out my arms in order to exaggerate this sensation. It was like my whole body was tingling as the walls passed through me. The wall seemed about 1 meter thick, and then I suddenly came out the other side into thick blackness. At this point I stopped and turned back to look at the wall I'd just come through. I stood there for a while, standing about 3 feet in front of the wall, just staring and trying to understand what I'd just done. This made me conclude that I wasn't dreaming, as I was rationalizing things, something that I couldn't recall ever doing in a dream. I then noticed that the wall was made out of red bricks, and these were illuminated, but from no obvious light source. I followed the wall along to see where I was, and found myself in a large area with nothing except for the wall that I'd come through and thick blackness everywhere else. The black was so dark it reminded me of the black background of a computer game. Everything that wasn't illuminated was the darkest of blacks. When I looked out into the blackness, it seemed to go on forever. But oddly, it felt as if I were only there. It felt as if it were only there for me. And although it looked to go on forever, it was in fact wrapped around me. It felt a safe and calm environment, and I spent what felt like 5 minutes just looking around. As I turned and faced the wall again, I noticed that to my left was a round black tunnel. I continued to look around and try to figure out where I was, but suddenly I became aware of a light coming towards me at a high speed through the tunnel. I watched the light come around a left-hand bend and descend slightly, to then travel straight towards me. The light was moving fast, and I could see it increasing in size as I got closer. This didn't panic me, but it reminded me of when I was a child playing near the railway line. I grew up in the country and there wasn't much to do. I assumed this was a train and thought the train was coming towards me through the tunnel. I moved to the side and gave myself enough space for the train to pass without pulling me towards it. I found a spot about 10 meters from the mouth of the tunnel and watched and waited. From the mouth of the tunnel, I was at 45-degree angle off to the right and about 10 meters back into the blackness. I saw the light emerge from the tunnel at a fantastic speed, but then immediately stop about 3 meters from the mouth of the tunnel. I looked at the light and saw that it was not a train but a ball of yellow, warm white light. It wasn't a perfect sphere, but had light protruding from its edges, and this light was blue. I looked at the ball of light and instantly said to myself, "Auntie." I know that sounds strange, but somehow I knew that this ball of light was my great aunt who died in 1996. She had been like a grandmother and a mother to me. My maternal grandmother had died before I was born, and my single mother working and leaving me with her aunt. I excitedly moved towards the ball of light, and it was at this point I realized I too was different from normal. The position I'd been in was slightly elevated, and I had to descend to meet the ball of light. I was also moving without walking. I felt that I had my usual body, but I couldn't see it. And if I wanted to move, I just had to think of it and lean in that direction slightly, and I would move. I embraced the ball of light and could feel my aunt hugging me, and I was hugging her back. It was the same as if we had both had bodies and were just hugging as normal. But she was a ball of light, and I couldn't see my body. My aunt then spoke to me with her same voice, but with no sound, speaking telepathically. I was overjoyed to be with her again. I felt safe, and it's difficult to explain, but I just knew it was her by sensing her presence. She said to me, "You'll be alright. Everything will work out for the best and you'll be okay." We were still hugging, and I replied, also without talking, "I want to stay with you. I don't want to go back." And she said, "You have to. You still have things you need to do. It's not your time." I did not want to go anywhere and said, "No, I want to stay with you. It'll be fine. I'll just stay." At this point, I became aware of a third voice, which was coming from behind me. This voice was male, very deep, and very loud. It was an older voice than mine, and it boomed in an authoritative manner. "Go back." It reminded me of the way a headmaster would shout at you as a child, and I felt that this was the kind of relationship we had, and although I didn't recognize the voice, it knew me very well. I looked over my left shoulder in the direction of the voice and saw another ball of light in the elevated position close to where I'd been earlier. I shouted in response, "No!" I was shocked at my reply. It reminded me of the younger me. I had been very headstrong as a child, rebellious and stubborn. This side had disappeared after many years in a disciplined organisation. I've thought about this a lot since. I have 2 young children whom I love very much, but at that moment I felt I was the happiest and most content I'd ever been. I felt that my children would be fine without me and that I would be safe where I was. The best way I can describe it is to liken it to your playing in your garden with your child, but then you decide to go on indoors. You know the children will be fine playing outside and they'll be with you soon. I said to my aunt I wanted to stay with her, but I did not want to go back. The aunt informed me that I still had things to do and I had to return. She said that everything would be alright and that events would turn out for the best. The male voice once again boomed at me, "Go back." I was shocked myself when I shouted in response, "No, I'm not going. I'm staying here." I can recall thinking to myself, where did that come from? And again, I had reminded myself of what I used to be like when I was younger. A couple of seconds after this, it was like someone behind me had switched on the world's most powerful vacuum cleaner. I felt my legs and arms shoot out in front of me as I was sucked backwards into this pipe. Within a millisecond, I was back in my body, eyes wide open and in the process of sitting upright in bed, gasping for breath like I'd been underwater for minutes. It was reminiscent of movie characters who have just been given an adrenaline shot. I sat in bed with mixed thoughts and feelings. I kept saying to myself, what was that? This event was so real. I also had the excited feeling that I'd just been with my aunt. Not because of the memory, but the feelings I had of just being with her. It was as if I'd just left her after visiting her house. I've thought about this event every day since it happened, and I can't remember everything as if it was yesterday. And I can remember everything as if it was yesterday. I initially started some Google searches to see if anyone else had encountered similar experiences, and eventually came across Raymond Moody's works, and eventually Ian's. I don't know if I was close to death or not, but this was definitely a near-death-like experience for me. This event changed my life. My suicidal thoughts disappeared immediately. From that point onwards, I was certain that I have something left to do in my life, and thought they'll only turn me away again if I don't do it. I had a relentless urge to tell people what I had experienced. After 2 years of saying nothing, I told 3 of my closest friends, and they all thought I was mad. I've not mentioned it again until now. I have not been to a church since, but have become very spiritual. I took up meditation to try and get back to the black void whenever I can, and now meditate daily. I briefly changed careers, but have since returned due to COVID. I stopped watching all the things I used to like to watch on TV, and can now only tolerate very little outside of programs about spirituality, nature, and travel. I'm suddenly crazy about Spain. It's become a huge part of my life. I've started learning Spanish and regularly listening to Spanish radio. I am a completely different person from the one before this event. I am more tolerant of people and realize that people are simply doing the best they can in life. Was this a dream? If it was, it's unlike any that I've ever had in my life before or after the event. I can clearly recall every detail of this experience, including feelings and thoughts, something I struggled to do for a waking moment around that time. Since this experience, I've struggled with certain parts of the event. For a long time I felt guilty about wanting to stay and seemingly being so careless about abandoning my children. I also felt very bad about the way I spoke to the authoritative figure who ordered me to go back. These feelings have passed with time, and after listening to other accounts from those who have felt or done the same. I should add that prior to this experience I was scared of death. I'd come into contact with it on many occasions through my job, and it was definitely not something I was looking forward to. Since this experience, I really don't care about dying. It's not something I'm constantly hoping for, but if I was told tomorrow that I had a month to live, it really wouldn't bother me. My whole outlook has changed. If it's time to go, then that means I've done my work and it's time for something new. Well, that's the end of that little experience. My first thought is, there's not really enough about the love, the light, God. For me, in this experience, you don't. When you read these regularly, you begin to crave certain aspects of it, and for me, it's become all about the light and the love, and wanting to read about that and share that with you. And every experience is going to be unique. This one doesn't go into that side of things. It touches on it briefly, but not as much as I personally like. But it still gives us an experience, something to discuss, and something to remind us that life continues on after this physical existence we're having now. So, although for me personally, this wasn't an experience that resonated on that profound, deep level, it still offers something. And just because it didn't bring me what I like to hear so much, it might have helped you. So let's go through it again. So it doesn't say whether that's a man or a woman. I'm just going to go with female. So at the end of 2016, around 2017 beginning, so 4 or 5 or 6 years ago now, this lady is suicidal. She's not a spiritual woman. She's not religious. She's never really gone to church. Just a normal person. It sounds pretty similar to myself, actually. She has uh, no real leaning towards anything spiritual. It's just life as we know it in this human body is all there is, and that's the end of the story. That's what I felt as well. So before these experiences, she wants to make this clear to all of us that she had no leanings towards believing in an afterlife or God or anything more than what we experience on a daily basis here. We live, we die, that's the end of the story. But obviously, after this experience, her opinion changes. She even goes as far as saying that these experiences, if someone had told her about a near-death experience before she had hers, she would write these experiences off as the person being crazy. They're either lying about it or they're high on drugs. So, this is a pretty common theme, I would have thought, in our world today when people talk about an experience, when they open up about their exposure to anything mystical, anything supernatural, anything more than what science can label as fact. It's generally written off as one of these things: insane, lies, or mental illness, or someone high on drugs. And this is why people are reluctant to come forward. Could you imagine if there wasn't this stigma on these sort of experiences, and it was accepted as fact and accepted as something positive and accepted as a blessing in someone's life rather than these other things people chalk them down to? It would become a lot more talked about. I think there would be a whole lot more of people come forward with these sorts of experiences. Ever since I've been doing this podcast, I haven't had an abundance of people talk to, like, it's only really over the last couple of months I've been actively trying to get the topic of God into the conversation, or, light, or anything spiritual. You might be surprised, but it's only the last couple of months I've sort of been confident enough to start talking to people about this topic on a daily basis, to people I meet, colleagues, that sort of thing. And the more you do that, the more, most people have had some sort of experience or know someone who has, and when you start talking about it, people generally, if they're confident enough, will start to open up and tell you about an experience they've had or someone they know's had. In fact, last night I was talking to a someone, a person I work with, their family, their family's in the aged care facility I work at, and they were telling me that. So we got onto the topic of near-death experiences, and she started to describe this experience where her neighbour was he was a plumber, or no, not a plumber, a tiler, roof tiler, and one day he had an accident, fell off and hit his head, and he passed over and came back. And during this experience, he went into a tunnel, and he said he was greeted by family members, and in true Aussie fashion, these family members told him to get the F back because it wasn't his time, and that was the end of his experience. And that sounds like that was pretty funny anyway, the way she told it, and the way Australians can be pretty down to earth and tell it like it is. And in this near-death experience case, there was no loving beings or light. There was just family members who greeted him and told him it wasn't his time, so get the hell back to earth. We don't want you here yet. So the more you talk about this to people, I think you'll find the more people will open up and claim to have had some sort of spiritual or mystical experience that they want to talk about. So in this case, she's in that skeptical camp, so she's not one to believe in it. So this is, I think, important to point out because she's gone from someone who doesn't believe in all this stuff to someone who does, and I just like going through that again because this is my experience too. I've gone from not believing to 100% believing. So I guess this just, for me, is more proof that spiritual experiences change people. They really happen, and they're not a hallucination. They're real, and just because we can't measure it or explain it or somehow scientifically prove it, it doesn't mean it's not real. So I like these experiences where they go from someone who doesn't believe in what's happening to someone who does, because I don't know, I guess I can relate to that, and for me it makes it more valid for whatever reason, because they haven't been conditioned in any way into talking about what they've experienced because this is what they believe. It's not what they believe. They've gone from one extreme to the other, from not believing to totally believing in a higher power. So she goes on and says, she's in this government service. She's in a pretty disciplined job. She's just, totally separated from anything spiritual. So yeah, we get it. She's not inclined to be religious or believing in anything more than what she is as a person. And my bad, I've just read the next paragraph, skimmed through, and this is actually a man, because he says, I've recently discovered that my wife had been involved in several affairs throughout our relationship. So, correction, this is a man. But he's describing what a lot of people describe in this paragraph. But around the time they have a spiritual awakening, he's saying all he's interested in is money, a bigger house, and all this material things. And then another thing happens. He finds out about his wife cheating on him, and he has to move out of his home, and he gets in a lot of financial trouble. And then he has to go to court with his wife's lover to sort out some mess there. I don't know what happened, if there was some sort of confrontation and someone sued the other person. I don't know. It just says he has legal trouble with his wife's new partner. And he also has got problems in his job. So it's amazing how often these experiences happen around the time that life is just throwing out one thing after another, and there's just a lot of suffering for that individual. And for whatever reason, sufferings, the worse it gets, can sometimes lead to some pretty incredible awakenings. I can personally vouch for that. was, on the brink of wanting to end it all myself, and for a variety of reasons. And, it was like one thing after another like this. And it's amazing how, I guess, you just get to a point where you just say, okay, life, I know there's something bad just around the corner. I'm just going to sit here and watch it and observe it and not get drawn into that drama. It's like a part of you dies, and you just can't, the pain and suffering that the suffering is bringing becomes unbearable, and you just have to learn to separate yourself from what's happening externally at some level, and just be peaceful and accept the fact that life's going to throw you its challenges, but obviously on the other hand also give you some blessings and love. And that's just the way life will go. It's the way this human experience is designed. It's not designed to travel in a straight line. It's always going to be going up and down. But sometimes those downs can just compound, and that trough can get lower and lower and lower. And for whatever reason, people, I don't know if it's a coping mechanism or what it is, but people seem to flower out of that darkness, out of that suffering. It's like they learn to, yeah, it's like a part of them dies. It's like the ego just can't cope with it anymore, and something flourishes. A light seems to be kindled when that darkness gets too much. And it's amazing how often people who are changed in the spiritual way have gone through some pretty severe darkness. And in this case, this man, is losing his wife. His job looks like it's on the rocks. His partner's been cheating on him. She's had several affairs. He's lost in a world of materialism as well. He doesn't have anything meaningful in his life. It's all about the money and getting a bigger house and keeping up with the Joneses. And I think, a lot of people, well, not, that's just the way our society is getting more wealth to obtain supposed happiness. But, the more I think everyone knows it's not, it doesn't work. It might give you a temporary buzz or a bit of pleasure buying that new car or upgrading to the new house, but pretty quickly, a few days, weeks, or whatever, it's it's not even, it doesn't give you that pleasure at all anymore. So yeah, but some people, they just continue throughout their whole lives trying to um, get something they can't really attain through material and physical goods. It's like um, you're chasing an unattainable dream there. It's just going to be buy, give you pleasure, and then try and get the next thing, and it just continues on that way relentlessly. And I don't, I'm not judging people who are like that, or that's their life. That's what they've chosen to experience. Uh, and I guess to a certain extent, I am a little bit like that. I would be lying if I said I wasn't. I'm always trying to find a little bit of happiness myself personally, but I've just through trial and error, through my own experience, learned that this isn't where it's going to come from. But that's not to say I still wouldn't like a brand new car or live in a mansion. It's just that I know that these things would not bring me the happiness that I truly desire, which is just a peace and contentment and freedom from needing anything to make me feel good from an external point of view. I just want something I just want eternal inner peace. That's what I want. And from my experience anyway, getting stuff from the outside doesn't keep that eternal peace at a state I want it to be for long. And I think there's a separation or a difference between wanting peace and happiness, because I think happiness is going to be a temporary high. That's, happiness is just a word, but if you think about it, it's just something that it's going to come and go. It's going to turn into sadness sooner or later. I just want that steady peace, no highs and lows, just steady as she goes. And that is, I think, what we all want, but we all go about getting it different ways. And there's so many teachings on directions to take as to how to get that, and which one is the right one, and which one suits each individual is obviously going to vary because we are all so unique. So I'm not knocking or judging or anything or anyone does, because at the end of the day we're all human beings. We're all, after that same thing. We're all after love and peace and acceptance, and everyone will go about getting that their own different way, and everyone will learn along their journey what works and what doesn't, and some will take those lessons to heart and take them on board and try to evolve from them, and others will just repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And it's just the journey we're on, and no one's perfect, and no one has all the answers. It's just a process that this life is, and there's no prizes or anything at the end of the day. We're all just trying to get through this experience, and whatever helps you get through it, you should be encouraged to go for it, because this life, it's a crazy thing, really, isn't it? We're here for 70, 80, 90 years if you live that whole time, and if you get a long life, and there's there's lots of little challenges along the way and lots of little experiences of love and joy. But, at the end of the day, this life can seem a little bit pointless. And it's we're on a hiding to nothing at some stages. But we are here, and we are in this miraculous little body, and we're able to see and feel and hear and touch and try to, it's like a choice we have. We can focus on life being challenging, or the miraculous nature of it, and being more grateful for all these little things we have. And I think that's what, for me anyway, makes life a little bit easier. I heard on a podcast the other day this lady talking about how so many people talk about this life as a hellish like experience, an experience of darkness, because we come from a place of light and we're here to experience what the opposite of that is like. And I think that's true to a large extent. We've got to experience some darkness to know who we truly are, because the place that we are when we are connected with the source is nothing like the separation we feel from the source at times on this planet. So it's this darker place we're in is often described as a hellish type environment. But, this lady I was listening to was saying, that's only because you're focused on that. It's only because you're focused on the negatives, on the darkness, on the challenges this life brings you. But maybe you can start thinking about this life as a heaven-like experience. And instead of seeing all the things that bring you down, look at all those things that are more aligned with a high vibration, that bring you that love that you desire, and use that as your guidance, as your way of experiencing planet Earth, as an experience of learning to be in heaven. So it's like just about everything, it's all about how you look at it. It's all what goes on in your head, and how you put that energy where you want you put your focus and awareness into. And obviously, when you put it in things that are negative, that's going to be more likely to drag you down into a negative state yourself, and vice versa. You think of love, you're going to be, you look for things you can love, you're going to be more likely to be aligned with that energy, that higher vibration. So she continues along her journey. She decides to try and kill herself one day. No, sorry, it's a man. It's a man. My apologies. He decides to try and kill himself, and this doesn't work. So he tries again, and this time it also fails. But after this second attempt, he doesn't go into how he tried. He just says he doesn't use drugs, and the second attempt doesn't work. So he goes and lies down after he tries the second time, and almost immediately as he lies down, his body jumps out. His spirit or his consciousness jumps out of his body. This, and when this happens, he is able to start walking through walls, and he goes into a fair bit of detail into what walking through a wall is like. He says he finds it quite pleasurable. He feels his whole body tingling as the wall passed through me, and I don't know if this wall's real, but he says it seems to be about 1 meter thick, so it sounds like it's just part of this extra dimensional experience. There's no, not many walls would be that thick, so I don't know how, if that wall was in actually this physical reality, or if it was just something that popped up out of the next dimension, and he was able to experience what walking through it was like. And once he crosses through this wall, he's in a thick blackness, and this is, I guess, what some people describe as the void. There's no one else around, there's just darkness, and in this situation, he isn't scared, he's just there. There's no fear really involved. He doesn't really talk about any of his emotions. He just says he is in this dark void and he feels alone, but he's not worried at all. And then he describes this being of light starting to come towards him. He describes it like he says like he was when he was a kid and he used to play near a railway line, and there was a tunnel there, and he'd be able to see a train coming through the other side of the tunnel, and it would have its headlight on, and this is the analogy he gives. He's in this experience. It's like he's near a railway line tunnel, and he can hear and see this light, although he isn't 100% sure what the source of the light is. He just sees it getting closer to him, and he is expecting it to be a train. And this light gets about 10 meters from the mouth, and he's just stepping aside, expecting it to whoosh past him, but to his surprise, it stops about 3 meters from the mouth of the tunnel, and he gets to have a closer look at what this light is, and he says that it wasn't like a perfect sphere, but it had light protruding from its edges, and the light on closer inspection was blue, and it just looked like a ball of light. And immediately he says, "Auntie." So he senses that this is his auntie who passed away. She was the figure who raised him when he was younger, because his mother was single and always working, and his real grandma had been died before he was born. So this auntie is his mother figure almost, it sounds like, and she is the one who is greeting him in this experience. But he can't actually see her. She has no physical features. He says he just senses that she has taken this form, this ball of light, and he has an inner knowing of who this is. And I guess this is just similar to people who, they see light and they automatically inwardly know that this is the source, this is God, this is the light, this is, um, everything that is, or even Jesus. Someone might sense that they're experiencing Jesus without actually seeing the physical features of that person. And I guess this is similar to that, except in this case, it's not an advanced spiritual being like Jesus or Buddha or someone. It's just, his auntie. But in his case, this person has a huge significance to him because she was the one who pretty much raised him as a kid. So they embrace, and it's interesting how he describes this as well. He's not in a physical form, and neither is she, but he says they embrace, they meet, they contact each other, and it's like they are physically touching. It feels to him like they're physically hugging each other, and I don't, quite understand how that works or how interaction between light beings would go down, but if it can feel like hugging, that's great and good to know. But maybe the art's just doing this because it is a way of him feeling that connection, and because he's so fresh out of the physical world, he needs something that's similar to physical embrace to understand that this is those two connecting. And maybe once people have been in the next dimension for a while, things like hugging, who knows? Who knows what happens? I'm just drawing some conclusions here that's fairly logical, I would have thought, but yeah. Then they communicate. He says telepathically, there's no voice, just exchanging of thoughts, and this is how they talk, like they always do in this other dimension. Then he becomes aware of a third voice. He never says who this third voice is, and the voice is a little bit intimidating. It's quite authoritative. It says, "Go back," and he says it reminds him of when he was a child and a headmaster would shout the same thing. So I think we've all been in something sort of similar situation to that when we were little, and you get in trouble at school or from a parent or family member or just someone older telling you off or telling you what you should be doing. And that is not, it's not a pleasant thing to have happen to you, I guess, at any stage in the life. But he says it reminds him of when he was younger and he used to get in trouble. And so when this voice says to him, "Go back," he shouts no in response, because he used to be a headstrong, rebellious and stubborn kid. But as time's gone on, he reckons this part of him has faded away a little bit. He's become a little bit more mature, and he works, he says, in an organisation that's very disciplined. I don't know exactly what that would be, but this has changed and eradicated this rebellious side to him and helped shape him into a more mature person. But, so this being, whoever it is, like I said, it doesn't exactly say who. I guess it could be another family member, or it could be God, even putting on that different role, being a little bit more assertive. But I don't know. I would have thought if this was God, surely God would have a nicer way to communicate. You need to go back, but sometimes I guess everyone needs a different way of being told something, and in this case it might have been exactly how this person needed to be reminded that they weren't where they were supposed to be yet, and they needed to head back to life. And who knows, I guess it doesn't really matter anyway. So he gets told to come back, and the second time he says, no, I'm not going, I'm staying here. And he, sticks his feet in and decides he really doesn't want to go back, like a lot of people do. But the next thing he knows, he's waking up in his body, and he is back in this physical reality and thinking to himself, wow, what just happened? So although this experience isn't profound as some in terms of the wisdom they get, or the merging with the oneness, or the experience of love and awe and wonder, and connection to a Jesus or a God, or some highly evolved wise beings, it still changes this man. I mean, obviously his life is in a situation where he is struggling and he probably needs some changes anyway, but with this on top, he becomes a totally different person. He says he stops going to church. He only rarely went anyway, but he becomes very spiritual. He takes up meditation and tries to get back to this other dimension as regularly as he can. He decides to stop watching TV. The only shows that he does watch are shows about nature or travel or spirituality. He just can't bear this other stuff, this violence and darkness that a lot of our TV shows seem to revolve around. I stopped watching TV for about a year myself. Stopped everything movies, and I missed it initially, but after a few weeks, you become pretty used to it, and it becomes normal. And I've sort of slipped back into some I don't know, bad habits, if you want to use that word, in terms of regularly watching something on a weekly basis. But it's I don't, although 90% of the shows I start watching, I give up. I just can't bear them. But every now and then I come across something I really enjoy, and it's something I do like doing. So I'm gonna continue to do it because I do like it. I love it, and I work hard, so why not? He says he becomes obsessed about Spain and anything Spanish. He starts learning the language. He starts listening to Spanish radio, which is great. And I think the message here is that you find something you're passionate about, something you love doing, and life becomes a whole lot easier, whatever that is, whether it's being creative, whether it's learning a new language, whether it's traveling, whether it's learning to be more happy just doing nothing. It doesn't matter if you love doing it, whatever it is. It gives your life a purpose. It gives it meaning. It gives it direction, and it is a great um, thing to do to fight off depression and mental illness. Because obviously, if you're loving doing something, you have less time to focus on the negativities in life, and just learn to find a hobby. It's great advice for all of us to find something we love doing, and to pursue that, because it makes life a really pleasurable thing to be a part of when you are doing something you enjoy. And finally, the main part of, well, not the main part, but another factor of his experience that has changed him is his fear of death. He says through his job, he has come into contact with death on a number of occasions. So I'm drawing the dots here. There's a few little clues. He's in a bit highly disciplined job. He sees a lot of dead people. I'm thinking possibly an army, someone in the army, this guy. And obviously when you are in that field and you're seeing lots of dead bodies, it's something you would be thinking a lot about, and it would probably scare you, especially if you had no spiritual beliefs like this guy had before this experience. And now he says that he isn't scared of death. He's not hoping for it, but if he was told he only had a month to live, he wouldn't be worried at all. He said, this little experience here has, he's stopped being suicidal. It's changed him remarkably, and this, to me, is the best proof that these experiences are real. The way people are before and after, it shows you, that it perfects them on a level that, it's very profound for the individual. They change so many parts of their life, and for them, this is real. And for those of you looking for proof of the reality of these experiences, that's where I'd be looking first. I personally don't need any more convincing, but for those of you on the fence, that would be probably the first port of call, is judging a person before one of these experiences and seeing what they're like after. And if it was a hallucination or some trick of the mind, it has to be, a pretty amazing thing for them to make the changes that they do. All right, I'm just going to leave it there for a couple of minutes. So you do as you wish. A bit of meditating would be a good time for that, I reckon. So this experience gave us a glimpse into someone experiencing the light, and the light in this case was a deceased loved one. So for those of you who have lost someone, especially those of you who have lost someone extra special to them, this experience could be a good reminder that they're there. They hear you, they're waiting for you, they know it's hard here, and they'll be there when you get to the end. So from that point of view, this experience was wonderful because it rekindled that faith that those that we've lost, that we love, are there and will be there. They might not be in the form that they are in this place, but it's always good to be reminded that when you leave someone in this place, it's not the final time you will, I don't know if see them's the right word, but the final time you will sense them or communicate with them, or whatever way you want to describe how two spirits interact with each other. That is waiting for you and all of us when we cross over and get to bond with these people once more. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate you listening. If you want to send me an email, my email is podafterlife@gmail.com. I welcome any communication, and I, in fact, encourage it. So please be brave, send me an email and just say hi, and I will promise to get back to you. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening. I love you all. Keep being amazing. Keep keep spirituality a big part of your life, because that's a ticket to a better understanding, more wisdom, and life being a little bit more cruisy. God bless. See ya.